Welcome back to the program. So first, I just want to let you all know that yes, I've been working very hard, very diligently on trying to figure out a way to get back my YouTube channel, the bigger of the two. And so far, I have filed a formal complaint with the FTC per the request of Andrew Ferguson, the FTC chairman, who, by the way, I'm trying right now to locate, get a hold of, and possibly have on as a guest, which would be even easier, because then I could just ask him point blank during the interview whether or not he would be able to help me. So that's number one. Number two, I have also reached out to the Institute for Free Speech, and I have sent them the documentation, the denied appeals, the crazy things that YouTube sent to me saying misinformation when it was just, for a guest, for instance, Edward Dowd. They actually said that his book, was somehow misinformation, and they took down his entire interview because of that. Dr. Pierre Corey was also censored on my show. Dr. Robert Malone was censored on my show. Dr. Naomi Wolf was censored on my show. So I have sent all the documents, all the information. I also showed them my numbers before being censored, in the millions. And so I just kind of put together a little care package and explained exactly what happened. I also sent the exact same email to an organization called FIRE. That's right. FIRE stands for Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. So between all of that and also in contact waiting to hear back from two attorneys that supposedly deal with constitutional law and freedom of speech, I'm on a mission, okay? I am on a mission. I couldn't do this for 4 years because I didn't have anyone that would possibly be even able to look at or even, push them to give back my channels. I didn't have that for 4 years. So now with President Trump in and Brendan Carr in and some of these other people in that supposedly believe in freedom of speech, I am on a mission to try to figure out how to get that back. Because if I can get that back and they turn it back on where it was 4+ years ago, it should be back pretty quick after that. Okay? So that's number one. But number two, an executive order that happened just a few days ago, but really people haven't really been talking about it. But let me tell you something. It is a game changer. It is the best game changer for immigration that you could possibly imagine. What is the number one struggle right now? As a matter of fact, President Trump just fired the head of ICE because of it. Deportations are not happening fast enough. Tom Homan is not satisfied. The borders are. President Trump is not satisfied. And so they want more action. So in order to help facilitate these people leaving, well, they came up with an amazing, awesome executive order. And I think it's going to be the catalyst that's really going to push these people to self-deport. Why? Because no longer are we dangling the carrot. Why else would they be here if it wasn't for the free benefits, right? They're not going to stay here. President Trump signed an executive order to ban all federal taxpayer dollars to any and all illegal aliens. Now, the fact that we have to sign an executive order to tell that we can't give money to people that are not here legally is absolutely astounding. But that's the world we live in with leftist communists that took over for the last 4 years. So here we are, breaking out of communism, basically, right? And now we are no longer going to dangle the carrot. It's sad that we needed an executive order for that, but of course we did. So this is a really important one. President Trump signed an executive order on Wednesday night that bans all federal taxpayer benefits to illegal aliens residing in the United States. Per White House official Bill Malugin, President Trump signed the executive order. The order will direct every single federal agency and department to identify all federally funded programs currently providing any financial benefit to illegal aliens and, quote, take corrective action, end quote, ensuring that any federal funds to state and localities will not be used to support sanctuary policies or assist in any funding of illegal immigration activities. Huge. Huge. These people are going to start self-deporting in massive, massive numbers. Why would they stay here? Number one, they risk being detained and arrested and deported, which then screws them up if they ever want to come back in the future. But also, more importantly, we've banned lawyers from being able to represent them. That was another executive order. And now there's no more carrot. There's no more free health care. There's no more free driver's licenses. There's no more free anything. The bell is gone. The carrots are gone. And bye-bye, illegal immigrants. Get the hell out of our country. You're not welcome and you're not wanted. Now, perhaps Stephen Miller might say it with a little bit more tact than myself, but that's the reality. Get the f*** out and do it quickly. So, that was number one. Number two, this is interesting. So, President Trump has fired the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a leftist by the name of Charles C.Q. Brown. Now, when Pete Hegseth was first nominated and then confirmed, and he took over, he was being coy about the fact that he had to work with this establishment leftist, basically. And he was like, I'm looking forward to working with him and blah, 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 blah. But they never had any intention of working with this guy. They were going to fire him. And why? Well, because President Trump has already nominated somebody to take his place. Now, you may have remembered the story that President Trump likes to say on the campaign trail, in interviews, whatever. He talks about this guy, Raising Cain, right? He talks about the story in which he flew into Iraq with no lights on the plane on Air Force One. They did it in the dead of night, right? And he gets there, and the first person he meets is this guy, Raising Cain. And they're having a conversation, they're having a discussion, and he's basically saying, how quick can you take out ISIS? And I'm doing the short version, obviously. And he goes, sir, we can get it done in 4 weeks. And Trump's like, 4 weeks? Every single talking head military analyst on every single talk show is saying it's going to take years. How can you do it in 3 or 4 weeks? He goes, sir, I can do it in 3 or 4 weeks. So he allowed him to do it. And of course, he destroyed the caliphate, destroyed ISIS, and President Trump has never forgotten him. He's been close to President Trump all of these years. And guess what? Now, Raising Cain is going to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That's what President Trump has just announced, I believe, about an hour and a half ago, if I'm not mistaken. So what did Trump say? Today I am honored to announce that I am nominating Air Force Lieutenant General Dan Raising Cain to be the next chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. General Cain is an accomplished pilot, national security expert, successful entrepreneur, and a warfighter with significant interagency and special operations experience. Then he goes on to talk about, his story and all that. I don't want to bore you. I just kind of gave you the short version of it. So there it is. We're going to have a new Joint Chief of Staff to work with Hegseth. And then, check this out. Trump is no longer going to protect judges. Matter of fact, the Department of Justice is stripping away protections for judges, okay? This is awesome news because a lot of these judges have multiple layers of protection. You can't get rid of them, you can't fire them, you can't impeach them, it takes forever, you got to do all these crazy things. They are baked into the system. Not anymore. Not anymore. Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice, they have decided no longer. Trump, Department of Justice, declares multi-layer protections for administrative law judges unconstitutional, and they are dismantling long-standing shields for unelected bureaucrats. The Department of Justice now, we can call it, not injustice like I said for years, the Department of Justice under President Trump has determined that the multiple layers of removal restrictions shielding administrative law judges, ALJs, are unconstitutional. The Department of Justice has concluded that current law makes it too difficult for the government to remove ALJs from their positions. These laws require multiple steps and layers of approval before an ALJ judge can be fired, which limits the president's executive power. ALJs in the United States are supposed to be impartial officials, which of course they're not, who preside over administrative hearings within federal agencies. They operate within the executive branch, not the judicial branch. A letter from Acting Solicitor General Sarah Harris to Senator Chuck Grassley outlined the Department of Justice stance, explaining that restrictions preventing the removal of ALJs under U.S. Code 51202 and 752 are unconstitutional under Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution. So no more protections for these left-wing judges. And quite frankly, these judges honestly don't even have the power, the constitutional power, the approval, the authority of being even able to do this. And you know who they can thank for that? A demented old man by the name of Joe Biden. Let me tell you a little quick story. You remember Sean Spicer, right? Sean Spicer was a press secretary in President Trump's first administration. He's also been by President Trump's side for a very long time. He's been part of the MAGA movement for a really, really long time. Well, after they stole the election from President Trump, he was still on one of the boards, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it was the Kennedy Center. And he was on the board of directors or something like that. Now, he had 2 months before his term was up. 2 months. But Joe Biden decided, you know what? I'm going to fire you anyway, 2 months early. So, guess what happened? He was fired. But Stephen Miller, who is extremely bright and a great legal mind from America First Legal, reached out to him and said, hey, why don't you sue? And Spicer said, well, I'm not going to win. He goes, that doesn't matter. We don't want you to win. We don't need you to win. We just want to make sure that if President Trump is back in office one day, we already have precedent with a judge or the Supreme Court or whatever higher court it may be, showing that a president has the authority to fire anyone for any reason at any time. God bless the intelligence of Stephen Miller. So they filed a lawsuit, and it was through America First Legal. It went to the courts, and they lost. Thank God they did, because the judges ruled that President Biden, at the time, the fake president, was allowed to fire anyone because he was the so-called president. Illegitimately, of course, but that's what they called him, right? So guess what? Sean Spicer and Stephen Miller are now responsible for all of these judges that are eventually going to get either overturned or they're going to rescind their own injunctions, which we've already seen happen at least twice. And you can thank Joe Biden for firing Sean Spicer and Stephen Miller for stepping up, taking the case, going to court, losing on purpose, so that there was precedent that a president can fire anyone they want and for any reason. God bless Steve Miller and his brains for doing that. So that is very, very important moving forward. Why? Well, because the Department of Justice says that the Biden judges that are trying to block everything, they can't block them because of Spicer v. Biden. There it is. There's precedent. There it is. The president can fire anyone they want. And that's the reality. And these judges are finally realizing that because the court has that docket, they can refer to that. And they can say, well, sorry, he's the president. It's the executive branch. He can fire anyone he wants. Why? Well, because Joe Biden did it, went to court, and Sean Spicer lost and couldn't get his job back. He didn't need his job back. He didn't want his job back. But Stephen Miller and America First Legal saw what was happening, and they said, hey, let's create, in case there's a future President Trump administration, the mechanism, if you will, to be able to fire all of these people. And there it is. Now, The Department of Justice says that the Biden judge assigned to the case of Trump's executive order on transgender troops has engaged in, quote, egregious misconduct, details shocking abuse of its attorneys. The Justice Department on Friday filed a formal complaint against a federal judge assigned for President Trump's executive order on transgender troops for engaging in egregious misconduct towards its counsel. On Tuesday, Judge Anna Reyes, a Biden-appointed judge, signaled that she would side with a group of transgendered soldiers who sued to block President Trump's executive order on transgender troops. Judge Reyes grilled Department of Justice lawyers on Tuesday and said that President Trump's executive order asserting that there are only two genders is, quote, not biologically correct. And this is a judge? Of course it's correct. There's only two. That's it. Two genders. When are they going to get it through their thick heads? With the DOD policy expected to be finalized over the coming week, Reyes said that she would hold off on issuing an order, but had largely made up her mind about the legality of the order, at one point even remarking that, quote, smart people, this is how screwed up she is, on the DC circuit would have to tell me that I'm wrong about the policy. She added that the central premise of the executive order, that only two genders exist, is, quote, not biologically correct, which of course it is. Last month, President Trump signed the Restoring America Fighting Force Executive Order and the Prioritizing Military Excellence and Readiness Act executive orders, which direct every element of the United States military to, quote, operate free from any preference based on race or sex or orientation and root out gender insanity and made-up pronoun usage, respectively. Judge Reyes also grilled lawyers on the use of pronouns and gender ideology. If you were in a foxhole, would you care about these individuals' gender ideology? Actually, yes, I would, because they'd probably be more concerned with the enemy that we need to kill rather than anything else. Or they'd be worried about how they look, or be worried about their fake periods, or worried about, is their lipstick look good before they go into a gunfight in battle? That's the sickness that has permeated, the cancer that has permeated throughout our military, that we are now cutting out by the root. Okay? So then it says, the judge's misconduct and abuse were much worse than previously known. The Justice Department detailed Judge Reyes' shocking statements towards its attorneys on Tuesday's hearing. During these hearings, Judge Reyes engaged in hostile and egregious misconduct that violates Canons 2A and 3A of the Code of Conduct for United States Judges, which requires judges to, quote, act at all times in a manner that promotes public confidence in the integrity and impartiality of the judiciary and be patient, dignified, respectful, and courteous to all litigants, the Department of Justice wrote in a complaint against Judge Reyes. The Department of Justice detailed 2 incidents of abuse of its attorneys. The Justice Department said during her lecture on the 30 different intersex examples, Judge Reyes grilled one of its lawyers about his religious beliefs and then used him unwillingly as a physical prop in her courtroom theatrics, the Department of Justice wrote. Judge Reyes then launched an attack on the attorney's Christian beliefs and went on a psychotic rant about transgendered individuals. Judge Reyes describes receiving an email suggesting that she develop a relationship with Jesus Christ. She then uses this aside as an excuse to randomly pivot to questioning the Department of Justice attorney about his religious views. What do you think Jesus would say to telling a group of people that they are so worthless that they were not going to allow them into a homeless shelter? Do you think Jesus would be... See, this is what the Christian left does, right? There's the Christian right and there's the Christian left. And you got to watch out for the Christian left because they are poison, they are cancer. And here's a perfect example. They clutch their pearls, they say that they're a Christian, and then, they believe in all these Christian values, but then they go around murdering babies in the womb. They're not Christians. They're fake Christians. So then she says, what would Jesus do? Sounds right to me. Or do you think Jesus would say, WTF, of course, let them in. The Department of Justice argued that Judge Reyes' line of questioning had nothing to do with President Trump's executive order and attempted to get the attorney into a trap of answering an absurd hypothetical question. The lawyer did not fall for the trap and simply replied, quote, "The United States is not going to speculate about what Jesus would have said or done about anything," end quote. See, these judges aren't even intelligent because they're appointed by dipshits that have no experience, like Joe Biden, and then they get appointed by Obama or whoever it was that appointed them, and they're there because they're either a lesbian, they're either a woman, they're either, I don't know, whatever, some type of minority, and then they get into these positions and they have no clue about the Constitution, no clue about anything having to do with judicial jurisprudence or anything, and then they make a fool of themselves. But there's a new sheriff in town, and her name is Pam Bondi, and they're not playing around. And with the fact that now President Trump has stripped those layers of protection for judges like Judge Reyes, well, she might be a Walmart greeter in the near future. Let's hope so. Those are my thoughts. What are yours? Put them down in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one.